All right, let's jump straight into this explainer and look at the literal foundation of our food system. A foundation that's, well, currently washing away right beneath our feet. Usually, when we think about agriculture, our minds go straight to the crops, the crazy weather patterns, or all the new farming tech. But today, we're looking directly at the dirt itself. It is a totally invisible crisis happening right in plain sight, and honestly, it absolutely dictates the future of our food security.
Get this. Every single year, Indian agriculture loses an estimated 1.25 millimeters of thick, fertile topsoil just to rainwater alone. Now, to put that into perspective, it literally takes nature centuries to build up that tiny, life-giving layer of earth, and it's just being stripped away in a single monsoon season. According to the data, Rajasthan is actually the worst-hit state, but it's closely followed by Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, and Karnataka. We are bleeding fertility at an astonishing rate.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to map out the erosion crisis, define what conservation actually means here, look at both the mechanical and the biological methods to fix it, weigh the pros and challenges, and finally, examine the government initiatives stepping in to help.
Let's kick things off with part 1, the erosion crisis, and map out exactly where this Earth is disappearing. This crisis really spans the entire country. We're seeing severe erosion stretching from the deeply scarred ravines, the Badlands, of the Chambal and Yamuna rivers, all the way up to the high Piedmont zones of the western Himalayas. It is just tearing through the Chotanagpur Plateau and the Tapi Sabarmati Valley over in Gujarat. Even the famously rich Regur soil areas of Maharashtra and the huge dry zones of Rajasthan and Haryana are taking a massive hit. Really, no region is completely immune to this.
Moving on to part 2, defining conservation. We need to rethink our whole relationship with the Earth. Before we can even try to solve a problem of this magnitude, we've got to redefine what our actual goal is. The crucial takeaway here is that soil conservation isn't just about stopping dirt from blowing away. It's a highly active, really multifaceted process. We're talking about practices that protect soil from degradation to ensure its long-term health and productivity. It means actively managing moisture, minimizing pollution, and actually improving the physical structure of the soil to keep the whole ecosystem alive and ticking. So it's really about vitality, not just containment.
Which brings us to part 3, mechanical and physical methods, basically our earth-moving solutions.
All right, let's look at our first line of defense. Imagine transforming a steep, hilly slope into level, step-like structures. It completely changes the way water interacts with the land, right? This is known as terrace farming. The edges of those steps act like little dams, totally stopping running rainwater from just washing the soil straight down the hill. It's a hugely successful method, and it's widely practiced with fantastic results in places like Japan, across Southeast Asia, and the USA.
But beyond those massive terraces, smaller-scale field practices are just as vital. For example, farmers use contour plowing. That literally just means plowing horizontally along the natural curves of a slope rather than straight up and down to break up that surface runoff. Then you've got mulching, which is basically laying down organic residues to cover the soil. It acts like a protective blanket that locks in all that essential moisture. And crucially, there's zero tillage, which, is exactly what it sounds like. You avoid tilling the field to minimize disturbance, keeping the natural soil structure and all those intricate root networks perfectly intact.
Now, if we zoom out to a massive, landscape scale, we step up to the heavy physical defenses. We're actively plugging eroded gullies, which forces the silt to settle before it can wash away. We're also constructing really substantial dams up on the higher courses of rivers to strictly control the sheer destructive power of rushing water. And to fight off wind erosion, farmers are planting what are called shelter belts. These are long, strategic rows of trees planted right along the edges of fields and on steep slopes to literally break the force of heavy, destructive winds.
Next up, part 4, biological and chemical methods. These are the living solutions.
Because, let's face it, moving Earth and building physical barriers is really only half the battle. While physical methods change the actual shape of the land, agronomic management uses the living biology of the plants and the chemistry of the Earth itself to actively rebuild the soil's fertility from the inside out.
So, what does this biological toolkit look like? Well, you've got strip cropping, where you alternate rows of tightly rooted crops like hay or wheat with crops like soybeans or cotton. This physically holds the earth together. Then there's crop rotation, which makes sure different nutrients are being drawn and replaced year after year. Cover cropping is super clever too. That's growing grasses or legumes during off-seasons when a field would normally be totally bare, so the soil is literally never left exposed to the elements. And finally, agroforestry. This brilliantly integrates trees right alongside normal crops to cut down wind erosion and maintain soil health for decades to come. Add to all of that the chemical precision of modern farming.
We definitely aren't just blindly dumping chemicals on fields anymore. Instead, we're utilizing highly efficient nanofertilizers and environmentally friendly biofertilizers. But maybe even more importantly, we are making highly targeted pH adjustments. By adding very specific amounts of lime or sulfur, farmers can precisely correct the soil's acidity or alkalinity. And this is a total game changer because it literally unlocks the soil. It ensures the plants can actually absorb the nutrients they desperately need to grow those robust root systems that end up holding the whole earth in place.
But it's not perfectly smooth sailing. Let's look at part 5, advantages versus challenges. The uphill battle.
So this brings up a pretty obvious question, right? If this whole diverse toolkit of mechanical, biological, and chemical techniques is so incredibly effective, why on earth is soil loss still a national emergency in India? Well, while sustainable agriculture clearly brings huge advantages, like improving crop yields, dramatically increasing water retention, and supporting biodiversity, it's fighting a really relentless uphill battle. It's up against massive population pressure that forces the overuse of land, completely chaotic and unpredictable rainfall driven by climate change, and, crucially, a really significant lack of on-the-ground awareness among the very farmers who need these techniques the most.
That brings us to part 6, government conservation initiatives, the macro-level response.
To try and bridge that massive knowledge gap, fight off climate impacts, and actually scale these vital solutions, national government initiatives have basically stepped in as the cavalry. For example, the 2015 Soil Health Card scheme was genuinely revolutionary because it gives farmers precise, individualized soil testing and nutrient recommendations. That completely stops blind fertilizer overuse. Then you have the PMKSY watershed programs, which actively transform dry lands using this really intelligent, community-led ridge-to-valley water management approach. Meanwhile, programs like the Paramparakart Krishi Vikas Yojana are directly funding the shift toward organic farming and minimal soil disturbance.
And this strategy extends even further than that. The National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture strictly targets water efficiency and broader conservation practices. You've also got the Catch the Rain campaign, which actively works to capture surface runoff and recharge crucial groundwater during those short but super intense monsoon seasons. Plus, CAMPA is stepping up to provide the massive financial backing that's absolutely required for large-scale forest regeneration and the restoration of lands that are already degraded.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. When you weigh the undeniable advantages of conservation against the sheer, overwhelming force of a changing climate and a booming population, we really have to ask the hard question: are these national policies moving fast enough? Can we actually bridge that awareness gap and implement all these physical, biological, and chemical solutions in time to save that precious 1.25 millimeters of topsoil that literally feeds us all? Honestly, it's the most grounded challenge of our time, and the clock is ticking on every single drop of rain.